And the radio started behaving in a way that I had never seen before, started interacting in a very strange way. And what became very fascinating is that these interactions violated or defied the laws of known physics.
What if the problem isn't that we can't find non-human intelligence, but that we've been communicating with it the wrong way the entire time? My guest today is Jimmy Blanchette, a radio communications expert who spent years building transmission systems powerful enough to bounce signals off the moon and document what appears to be responding. What he's recorded isn't belief-based and it isn't theoretical. It's technical, it's repeatable, and it raises one unsettling question. If something is answering, who's been listening? This is the Ryan Files. Let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, man. We've got a great show tonight. Tonight on the Ryan Files, we're joined by someone whose work sits right at the intersection of engineering, consciousness, and the possibility of non-human intelligence. Jimmy Blanchette is a radio communications expert who has spent years building high-powered transmission systems, bouncing signals off the moon, and documenting the responses he believes he's receiving. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, this is one of the most fascinating technical approaches to cosmic outreach I've ever seen. Jimmy Blanchette, thank you so much for coming on the Ryan Files.
Hi, Ryan. It's a great pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Jimmy, before we get into this, how did you get started? Obviously, you're involved with radio signals and whatnot. This started at a young age. When did you get started, and how did what's the genesis of all of this?
Yeah, no, sure. Well, I am an licensed amateur radio operator since the age of 12. So, early on, I was really always interested in the universe, and one of my passion was to build huge antenna system, which I've been doing pretty much all my life. And so, I've been doing amateur radio communications all my life as a hobby. Really in 2017, I was seeing some videos about CE5 and human-initiated contact, and people claiming being able to make contacts really. And there were some videos out there. I said, wow, that's pretty cool. I said, well, I have all this huge radio station. Why not use this radio station to send a signal out there just for fun? Really, I didn't have much expectations of anything happening, to be honest. And I got a reply. And I have all the evidence of that. I have videos I will present. So this is how it started, really. It was, let's say, more scientific curiosity from my part to get into this. And I started having, replies and interactions or manifestations in the skies, which I was able to record. And over the years, I kept making transmissions. And I shared this experience with C5 groups, also human-initiated contact group around the world. There are fantastic people out there making contact. And we started using the methodology. We're using some small handheld radios as well to, where these interactions were happening. And I popularized the technique, and it's been used worldwide now, since 2017. These contact groups send me a lot of video evidence of their contact and so on. So again, I'll be happy to present a bunch of videos today and show you a bit how that looks like.
Yeah, because I'm fascinated by the process. You're talking about bouncing signals off the moon and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, show us exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, let's do that. So I put a few slides together so we can show some visual. So let me just share my screen. I will share the audio as well. Yeah, so again, one of my passions has been to build a very large antenna system. And what we see here to the left is my current setup. I'm located near Sedona in Arizona. These are phased array, very powerful antenna systems, capable of deploying about 250,000 watts on 432 megahertz and 150,000 watts of radiated power on 144 megahertz. So this power is really, in terms of power density, we're looking at power that exceeds, the most powerful radio station, that transmit on AM or FM radio. So this is a lot of power. So at this kind of power, literally, the radio wave will physically reach any target in our solar system, whether a target Jupiter, the moon, the sun, whatever. The radio wave will physically reach these locations. So so just to give an idea, so we see here, and to the right is an old setup I had in California. We see how big it is. I mean, these antenna literally was as big as my house.
The neighbors loved you. The neighbors loved you.
Oh yeah. Every time people walked on the street and they just stopped, looking at it. And and I made that. So this antenna system actually were specialized for moon-bound communication. So in 2013, I started developing, I heard about a contact modality called moon-bound communication. So I had never heard about it. It's a radio amateur communication technique, a very exotic. There are only a few people in the world doing this kind of crazy communication, but really it consists in using the moon as a reflector, like a bouncing pad, if you will. So with enough power and with sophisticated equipment, it's possible to, beam radio wave, get them scattered or bounce off the moon, and they reflect back towards Earth, towards another radio station. So this way, essentially, we can use that moon as a relay station, if you will, to make a communication or a two-way communication somewhere else on the planet who obviously has a moon window, right? And so that's what we call moon-bound communication or Earth-Moon-Earth communication. So again, this requires very sophisticated equipment, a lot of power. This is what I started in 2013. I started getting, I was interested in it. So I started building radio station and antenna system that will accommodate that contact modality. I made some very unique design in the field. So these are example of scientific publications covering my setup. So I had the opportunity to write a couple of scientific papers about my radio station, which was unique. It had rotatable polarity capability, and we see to the left made the cover page of that German magazine. Actually, it's a European magazine which has worldwide distribution. So this was in 2016-17. Another picture here, we see to the left the actual radio station with my equipment, and to the right is my phased array. Again, there are 4 antennas, but 2 of them are for 432 megahertz, and the 2 others are on the outside of or for 144 megahertz. I have a camera set up. We can see here there's a camera system set up to record the what may be happening in the sky, so this is really how I started. So as I said, so to go back essentially to the day of my first contact, on May 1st, 2017, this is, I had my first contact. And so what I did actually days prior, so at the time I intended to set up a CE5 group or human initiated contact to make contact work, right? And so that was my objective at the time. I had heard about it and I had never tried. And so I was trying to find a location somewhere, remote location where we could do this contact work with a small group of people. And so I had located a site, at the time I was living in California. It was a site near Rose Valley, California, deep into the Los Padres National Park, very far from a city, far from any human installation, far from light pollution as well. So I had found a site and I said, okay, I'm going to go scout, physically to go see that location. I had found it using Google Earth. And I know, the location. I had gone there before a little bit as well. So decided to, so before going to kind of screen the site or scout the site for future contact work, I decided to develop a binary code message, essentially, which will contain the latitude and longitude, the geographical coordinates of that specific contact site. And I had also indicated the time and date, where I will be there. So I had, in the days prior to going there for the first time, I broadcasted this message, this invitation message, essentially for contact. I was not expecting anything. And then we see to the right is the actual antenna system I had at the time, the one that was published in the magazine. This is a triangular array rotatable polarity. I broadcasted this message with 150,000 watts towards, all the planets in our solar system that I could see at the time, the sun, the moon, and so on. So I have actually a video recording of that transmission, so I can show you how that sounds like, or that sounded like. So this is binary code, homemade binary code message. So here it is. So this message lasts about 30 seconds. I'm not going to play it all, but essentially, as we can see here, all these packets, packets of 8 bits, right, like really binary code, 1 and zeros, encoded at different solfeggio frequencies, which contain, again, that my intention to go to that site on May 1st, 2017 at the given time. So this is what I did. And go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. So I got to the site, and so I got there. It was a beautiful place. There was a lake just in front of me, very small lake, a little forest. It was perfect. There was no, interference or anything. It was far from the city. So I said, that's great. So I decided to stay there maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I had brought with me a handheld radio that I was using to do, amateur radio communication, to do satellite communication and things like that. And I had tuned that radio to the same frequency that I had broadcasted the message with my large radio station. So, that can actually, it kind of sounded logical for me to do that. But again, I was not expecting really anything to happen. And maybe, 15, 20 minutes after arrival at that site, I had, put that small handheld radio on the rooftop of my car, and the radio started behaving in a way that I had never seen before, started interacting in a very strange way. Here I was in the middle of nowhere in the national, Los Padres National Park. Far, there's no cell signal, no human installation. So I had never seen my radio behaving this way before. That didn't make sense to me. So I'm going to show the video clip actually of that interaction on the day of my first contact. So let me just show that video here. It's going to give you an idea how the radio sounded like.
This is awesome, Jimmy. This is awesome.
Great. I'm glad you like it. Well, I like to show evidence of it because it's real. These are real experience. So I'm happy to share this footage.
It's 2:16 in the morning. The radio is very active right now.
So this is what happened. And so, I was puzzled. And at the time, to be honest, and that's people may think that's crazy. I didn't make the connection, right? The radio was triggered this way. And I got annoyed, actually. I was trying to stay calm and relax. Here I was, next to a lake and a beautiful location, and this radio was going crazy. I didn't make the connection that this was an interaction back or a reply to my broadcast in the prior days. So anyway, I packed everything up. I said, great, I found a good site for future contact work. I wanted to put a little group together. I went back home, and then I was still really curious and intrigued. So why was the radio behaving this way, right? So I tried at home to kind of replicate it, try to generate interferences with my large radio station. And no, the radio was, didn't do that at all. I carried a small handheld radio. I clipped it on my belt, during the week while I was going to the bank in town, going to the grocery store. I said, if there was any interference triggering the radio, this should happen while I'm in the city where there's Wi-Fi, there's all kind of interference, right? Nothing happened. The radio was completely silent because there's on this radio, there's a squelch, we call it, an auto silencer. So unless it's triggered by a strong signal, it's not going to do anything. So nothing happened during that week. And then I started reading on the internet that people doing contact work, sometimes the intelligence was interacting with electronic equipment. So then I said, oh my God, maybe this was a reply of something, right? I started connecting the dots, and then I said, I'm just going to go back there again. So I broadcasted, and I put together another message, and I broadcasted it again. And I said, I'm going to go there again 2 weeks later. I had a friend with me this time. And so I got back to the site, same location. And a few minutes after arrival, the radio started doing the very same thing again, same type of interaction. I said, oh my God, right, this became clear that this was some kind of intelligence interacting with the radio. And clearly they have decoded my binary code message, to have contact on that date, on that location. What else could it be, right? So this is how my really story started. Then I purchased a night vision camera, and I went back to that site by myself alone almost every weekend. I became very passionate by it. I was fascinated. And at the time, I ended up not putting a C5 group together. People didn't show up, or, it became like a personal experience to me, a personal thing that, I started experimenting with. So I went back to that site many times after during weekends, and I started having sightings, which I was able to record with my night vision camera system. The interactions with the electronic equipment was very consistent every time I was going there. And finally, I didn't even need to go there anymore. I could do it from my own backyard. I was having the same interaction in my own backyard where my actual antenna system was, set up. And so, and just to give also a brief overview of this is, I was saying like earlier that the radio wave, right, at that kind of power will physically reach all the corner of our solar system and far beyond. And even a small handheld radio, and people don't know that, on Earth, of course, with a handheld radio, the signal, will just go to a few miles, right? But in space, while you broadcast something, your signal will go in space and actually can even reach the moon. And I can prove that technically, being, kind of very experienced in amateur radio communication. To give an example, China sent a probe back in 2014 called a 4M mission. So that probe was equipped with a small antenna system, we can see here, solar panel, and had a telemetric system, or was broadcasting telemetry. And the goal of that probe was going to the moon and back, right? A round trip to the moon and back. It was a Chinese mission. And throughout its travel to the moon and back, that probe was transmitting telemetry that amateur radio operator could essentially receive and decode here on Earth. And we have a screenshot here to the bottom left of the telemetry that this probe was broadcasting. But what was amazing about this probe is that this probe was broadcasting with only 1 watt of power.
Wow.
With a single watt of power, we were able to decode and detect this very weak signal from that probe, which went to the moon and back. So this is an evidence to show that even with a single watt of power that we broadcast with a handheld radio here on Earth, your transmission, your radio wave will physically reach the moon in space because there's no obstacle.
Right.
And that's why also, aside from broadcasting with my own large radio station, which was, amazingly powerful, I realized that we could even broadcast with the smaller handheld radio, and the signals were being received and decoded by these non-human intelligence because they were replying back in the form of manifestations in the sky or interaction with the electronic equipment. And what became very fascinating is that these interactions violated or defied the laws of known physics, because I could have, for instance, I'm going to show a real video here. I had, for instance, purchased several radios identical. So radio were identical, same brand, and tuned to the same frequencies. And when these interactions were happening, these manifestations, these radios were having their own energy signature, were behaving completely differently from one to another, which didn't make sense, which violates the laws of physics, because as we know, if we have radios that are tuned to the same frequency and they are receiving radio wave, they will behave the same way, right? It's like listening to an FM radio station in your car. If you have 3 radios identical set to the same station, you're going to hear the same music, right? It's not what was happening. These radios were behaving completely differently in a way that was unmatchable. I could not replicate their behavior. It's too fast. It's not like a typical interaction or an interference where you hear some kind of background noise like the the typical thing. These interactions had some tones into it. It was very strange. So I'm going to show a video here of an example of these interactions that are violating the laws of physics. So what you're going to see here is a transmissions that I made to the Galactic Federation. Because I was attempting contact. So I said, okay, why I'm going to try that. So I sent an invitation message to the Galactic Federations. What we'll see in a few minutes later, the radio being triggered, all of them behaving in a very different way, which indicates that they are not communicating with radio wave, but some other form of energy that we don't understand.
All right, let's see this. Yeah.
So what you're going to hear here, and I had developed over time a technique essentially where I could convert text and images into sound waves, right? And so I have a specialized software. Essentially, I can create a written message with some pictures in it, like a postal card, literally. And I take that picture and I convert that into audio, into a spectrogram, right? And that's the audio that I'm broadcasting with my radio station. And so I assume that, if I could do it, that any non-human intelligence would be able to pick this, spectrogram and decode it, and see what the message is. And it's exactly clearly what's happening because they are clearly replying as a result of these transmissions. So here it is. So this lasts a couple of minutes, and you will see at the beginning the actual message, the sound waves, and also the interaction that follows.
Okay.
All right.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, this is really special. I found out also that even if I was putting the radios in a Faraday cage, which should essentially keep any radio wave to go in and out, the interaction is still happening, right? So essentially, clearly, these interactions are not driven by radio wave. So here I was broadcasting with radio wave, but what they're using to reply back are not radio wave. It's some other form of energy.
Interesting.
So over time, I was able to accumulate a lot of different evidence of contact. Some during daytime, we see it at the bottom left. Some during daytime, some plasmic or ships. I was able to capture above my house. We see on the upper left side, massive flashes. Very large object producing flashes in response to the broadcast. So I have several video evidence of it. I'm going to show the short video clip if you don't mind. It's a collection of some of these interactions, in the sky that I was able to record. At the beginning, what we'll see is a broadcast that I made where I was actually requesting a daytime sighting, essentially a sighting occurring during daytime. So it was a very specific request that I made. Again, I had the coordinates, where I will be. And I was going actually, during lunchtime, I was going to hike at a location close to, it was in Santa Barbara, California, close to the ocean. It was really on the shore of the ocean. And I was going there every lunchtime. So I said, okay, I'm going to create a message essentially to invite the intelligence to manifest their presence during daytime at that location while I was doing the hiking every day, essentially. And one of the day, one object was just above my head, and it stayed there for an hour and a half. So I have a lot of footage of it. So I'm gonna show that, and it's going to be followed by some other sightings I was able to capture during daytime and also during nighttime. And I want to mention also, while I'm playing this, that I always have a very sophisticated satellite tracking software. I have loaded up the full inventory of the NORAD satellites that exist in that software. So I always do my homework to make sure that any nighttime sightings are not some kind of satellites or rocket body or anything like that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna play that video and to show again example of interaction I've had over the years I was able to capture. So here it is.
Wow, Jimmy. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's very exciting. You know, am I still sharing my screen? Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this are just a few examples. So I gave example of radio interactions, also sighting the sky during daytime, during nighttime. Obviously, during daytime, there's no there's no satellite during daytime, right? So it's really it was very obvious these were not uh, man-made type of thing. So over time, so what happened next is when I moved, then in 2021, I moved to Arizona. Um, from California to Arizona, I got a new setup here, even more powerful. And I set up actually for the first time cameras onto the antenna system so I could record, while I was broadcasting. And what unfolded really blew my mind because during broadcast, I was getting all kind of manifestations. I'm going to show an example here. So this one was December 21st, 2021. We see how I was broadcasting towards the moon. We see a chemtrail here, this guy, and these two objects just popped in and out, during the broadcast, very well-defined geometric shapes, defined angles. These are not bugs, obviously, with that kind of definition. Some other example here, this was May 12th, 2022. Again, this kind of object, it's hard to say if it's a one object or two different things, right? But clearly these manifestations were occurring during the broadcast. You have an armada of three objects appearing. This was June 14, 2022. Another one here, June 22nd, 2022, transmission towards Vega. And then things started really to change direction because a lot of these sightings, I realized, were very defined shape and seemed to contain information, like as if they were trying to communicate information, right? And we see here, interesting, these four craft that just appeared right in front of the antenna, really literally matching the symbol of wavelength, right, or frequency, if you will. So I found this very interesting. And then 2022, something really extraordinary happened. I'm sure you heard about the famous 1.6 gigahertz, right, at the Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, yeah.
So this is not an accident. So this frequency is the golden ratio frequency. And I'm surprised that they have not figured it out yet, but 1.618 is the golden ratio, right? So in 2022, and there's entire mathematics, there's a lot of math behind it I could show, but I'm not going to get into detail right now. But this frequency is really, really significant and important. It's like a frequency that clearly will draw attention. Let's put it this way. So on May 31st, 2022, I broadcasted a message, but I broadcasted a tone, and that tone contained that frequency, that 161.8 hertz. And during the broadcast, this triangular formation appeared right in front of the antenna array here. It's very well defined shape. And so what I did at the time also, so I zoomed in, as we can see here, and I calculated the angle of what this triangle was. And amazingly, and this blew my mind, I realized that this angle, this 103.655 degrees, happens to be the supplementary angle of the apex of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Wow. Wow.
And there was things even more profound about it. This angle is actually found everywhere in the universe, but also in many, many ancient sacred sites around the world. We see these pyramids here, the Doger pyramid, the Step pyramid in Egypt, the one on top is in South America. They all have this angle, 103.655 degrees. So why, right? Why are we having these ancient sacred sites from different civilizations scattered all over the world with that angle? Right. And clearly the intelligence is telling us something, right? It's drawing our attention to this. And we see actually that this angle is very unique because not only we find it in ancient sacred sites, but even in nature. We see, for instance, the ray here, the stingray, has this angle embedded in it, even some animals. So I'm working with a gentleman called Charlie Zees. He specialized in angle measurements, and I had communication with him, and he started looking into it, and he had done his own work on the golden ratio scaling. And this angle actually is very, very important. We find it everywhere in nature. I'm just showing a slide here, but I could show you 100 slides of all kind of technologies. Even we use even the jets, some of the human technology use this angle. It has very unique aerodynamic properties. And we see here, I don't know if you may have heard of Skywatcher, right? Well, and again, interestingly, they have not figured it out themselves, but the famous class 5 UAP, the mentor ray that we show here, that angle is exactly 106.555 degrees. That's the same angle. That's why they call it the mentor ray. And again, to me, I understood that the intelligence, were showing these figures, to Skywatcher to communicate information. And I picked it up because it fit with my work, and I figured it out. But I don't think they have figured it out. They're still trying to understand why this thing looks like a manta ray, right? Well, it's because they're communicating this angle. This angle is very important, and it goes into mathematics. And I'm not going to get into this right now, but it's very significant. Over time, what happened? So I had more actually manifestations which had very specific shapes and angle. This one, I call it the golden ratio triangular craft. So I had my first manifestation here on December 5th on the upper left of 2021. So these 3 lights appeared right next to the antenna in a very unique shape, triangular shape. I had another manifestation on December 25th. We see here that shape again, and at the bottom on February 5th, 2022. So this triangular craft, or these lights, clearly was, again, seemed to communicating a very unique shape. So what I ended up doing is taking a screenshot, and trying to look into it. And and when I started analyzing the angle of that triangle, this blew my mind completely. Because if you recall, when I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, I was broadcasting these messages on 144 megahertz and 432 megahertz, right? These are the 2 frequencies that my radio station are capable to transmit at. I have 2 antenna systems to broadcast on this frequency at very high power. And I realized that when I did the analysis of this triangle, the first thing that was really significant is that if we ratio any side of this triangle over any other side, we always get the golden ratio. Oh, wow. Right, and the golden ratio is very important, right? In nature, that's what essentially, all the fractality in nature is based on a golden ratio, pretty much. It explains how the plants grow, the flowers grow, even how the galaxies, the galaxy forms. I mean, the golden ratio is embedded everywhere in nature. It's a very fundamental principle, very important principle, and in mathematics as well. So that was amazing to me, that if we ratio any side of this triangle, we'll always get the golden ratio. And in addition to that, I looked at the angle here. In that angle to the left side matched 4.32 degrees, which happens to match the very frequency I was broadcasting on, 432 megahertz. This is the same harmonic. And the angle to the right side matched 6.94 degrees, which matches the reciprocal of 144. And I'm going to do it on the screen here just to show that I'm not making up these numbers. So if we take, for instance, here, if we take 6.94 degrees, 6.94, and we do the reciprocal, we get 144.000. You see, that's harmonic 144. So that triangle not only contains in every proportion contain the golden ratio, but contains the very 2 frequency I was broadcasting on.
Wow, Jimmy, that's crazy. That's not accidental, man. I mean, that you can't that's like 1 in a quadrillion, whatever chance of that happening,
Exactly. This was clearly an intelligence communicating intelligent information back, right, as a result of this transmission. So what I did at the time, when I figured it out, I said, okay, right, I want to make them know that I figured it out. So I created a message essentially showing that I figured it out, showing this golden ratio triangle. And that's what I broadcasted back to them, like a homework, if you will, right? I was broadcasting back my homework, and something extraordinary happened. And let me show you what happened when I broadcasted this message to show that I had decoded what they were sending to me. So let me just play this. It's called a return of the golden ratio triangular craft. So we're going to hear the original message, and I have the recording of what unfolded. So here it is.
This is one of those conversations that keeps going after the episode ends. We keep the mics on for the aftermath over on Patreon. All right. I hope you're enjoying this episode. Let's get back to the conversation. That's awesome, man. Wow.
So pretty crazy that they reciprocate, clearly replied back to, the message and showing the same shape, essentially the same golden ratio triangle. So let me go back to the slide here. Quite extraordinary. And, making a long story short here, very shortly after, when I realized these three numbers, the golden ratio we see here, the harmonic 432, harmonic 144, I was drawn and I started analyzing. I said, okay, we know that the Great Pyramid of Giza encodes a lot of information, mathematical information. I started to look deeper into it, and I was stunned to see that these harmonics were encoded in the very dimension, in the very structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Harmonic 144, golden ratio, and 432. We see, for instance, the hypotenuse is 186.6 meters, so that's exactly harmonic 432 squared. And I'm going to do it just one time on the screen here to show that I'm not, making this up. So if you take harmonic 432 and you square it, you get 186,624. You see, that's exactly the hypotenuse of the Great Pyramid of Giza, 100% match, 100% accuracy. Even the height is based on harmonic 144 plus golden ratio squared. The base is harmonic 144 times golden ratio minus golden ratio squared. I mean, it's all based on these three harmonics. Even the angle, the slope angle, which is 51.84 degrees, is also a function of these harmonics. I'm going to show it on the screen. Again, I'm not making this up. This is a very simple calculation. So if we take harmonic 432 times the square root of harmonic 144, what I'm showing here, we get exactly 51.84. That's the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Wow.
So essentially, this intelligence was communicating in a universal language. And I figured it out, and this is what my work is based on. I've been doing this work now for a few years and done many shows about it. And essentially, they are communicating a language that's encoded in all ancient structure, most ancient structure around the world, and also encoded in many UAPs manifestations. My own, but I also have other examples from other sources that they are communicating essentially the keys to the universe. And I figured that essentially I realized that the product of these three harmonics that they are communicated equals to the number one, which is essentially source, or some people call it the Big Bang, right? The universe, all that is that exists in the universe divides itself into these three harmonics, which creates the material world we live in and everything else. This is what the geometric harmonic physics that I developed over the last several years. And I'm not going to get into the detail right now, but maybe that's for another show we can show it. But essentially it explains, it's a new perspective on physics. That is the physics that has been hidden from humanity for a long time, and this is what the civilizations they know about it, and they know that once we pick it up and we remember this knowledge, this universal language, we will be able to develop technologies, to go into space, anti-gravity, healing technologies, and things like that. And that's what they're communicating to us. To make a long story short, and they're kind of waiting for us to pick it up and kind of rediscover this knowledge. And by the way, I have also many examples for those interested. You can go on my YouTube channel. I have many examples of broadcasts where I documented UAP manifestations during the broadcast. This one we can see here, I made a broadcast that lasted 22 minutes. And during these 22 minutes, there were 14 UFO or UAP manifestations right in front of the antenna. And some of them are actually not moving, they are stationary. So the one we see here is the stationary craft that was parked there, and every 2-5 minutes they were kind of pounding, with flashes just to indicate that they were receiving the broadcast. So I have many evidence of that for those interested. And so that ends my my presentation for today. I think we've covered probably enough for this first one.
Wow, this is fascinating. I got a couple questions. You mind?
Absolutely.
So the first thing that comes to mind, I think probably just average Joe. A lot of people have heard of SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and they've got these massive radio telescopes and they are just pointing them in the sky and shooting. They've been doing this since what, the 70s or 80s at least,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And allegedly maybe one or two returns that are maybe something they don't know, or it is something, who knows. And here you are, in your neighborhood in California, out in the desert, you're in Arizona now, and you're getting all this stuff in real time. What 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 are they missing that you've got, or are they just not telling what they've got? I don't know, man. It just seems like there's a real big disconnect there, right?
Yeah. There's a big disconnect. I mean, I believe, again, I cannot prove that with 100% certainty, but I think they're clearly not telling us, with what's really going on. I mean, they're showing this program that they are, supposedly looking at the sky and, and not seeing really anything in background noise. As you said, except a couple of occasions, they detect like the wow signal, for instance. And by the way, I decoded the wow signal. I can show you, what the decode is. But anyway, so I think they are not telling us the truth clearly, because I've been in contact with many experiencers now since 2017. I've been in touch with people, making contact in C5 groups and so on. People go in the desert during weekends. They have group of people meditating, and some are using technology. And I can tell you, people are making contact. It's happening as we speak. Every week, people are doing it, and it's not new anymore. And it's fascinating to me that even mainstream ufology is still kind of behind, is still trying to find out, is it real? Is it really real? Is it, are they really non-human intelligences out there? I mean, it's proven now. Anyone willing to invest the time to do it, you can join contact group and go try it. You'll see. I mean, it's happening. There's manifestation in the sky. There's interaction with electronic equipment. Some have mystical experience, because all this connects to consciousness as well. This is the amazing thing about it. This is a multi-layer phenomena. Just to give an example, I have not mentioned it, but in some of the video I showed earlier, at some point we see a kind of plasmic or ship passing over and produce a massive flash, right? And we see it becoming very big. So my experience at the time, I was in my backyard when I recorded this footage. I had, again, made transmissions prior to that. And when I recorded it, believe it or not, when this object passed over me, I said 3 words. As in my head, I said, "Flash at me." And maybe a second and a half later, this flash, massive flash, occurred, and I was able to, record it on my camera. So have they picked up my thought, right? I mean, this really happened this way, right? So people making contact in a C5 or human initiated contact, they meditate, right? They do it for meditation. They don't really use technology, and they have all kind of experiences. So and we see, I mean, sky watchers and other, I mean, the psionics, they call now, that's their new term for it. I mean, clearly there's that aspect of consciousness that's connected to that. So in a sense, my work has been focused. Yeah, I brought technology into it, but I still mix the consciousness aspect of it, and that's kind of, very interesting field, if you will. And so to answer your question earlier, I have no doubt that they have evidence that their activities out there. And if you watch that, actually, if you watch that documentary that I presented at the beginning from Darcy Weir, Fast Walkers, he has a very excellent documentary, extensive documentary showing all the footage from NASA, from the space shuttles, all the missions they had. There were all kind of manifestation of triangular craft and lights, and they have a ton of evidence, but they're not showing it to us. Obviously, they don't want us to know the truth.
Yeah, it's a shame, man. And listen, even as suppressed as it is, I think if you do your due diligence, you're going to find it. It's out there right now. I mean, yeah. And people that are still denying the existence of this stuff, I struggle to understand why, but that's another conversation. Tell me about, these signals that you sent out, which are fascinating. And you were getting signals back. Were you in any way, shape, or form able to decode any of that, what it was saying back?
Good question. Yes, to a certain degree. And so let me explain. So it looks like when I'm receiving these interactions through the radios, there are different energy signatures. So every radio will have a kind of its own pattern and energy signature, and it's very consistent over time. When they interact, they're going to reproduce that energy signature, which has kind of very defined pattern and so on. On one of the energy signature, I use a spectrogram analyzer to see if there was any tone or frequency embedded in this signal. And I discovered there were 8 tones. In one of the signals, there were 8 tones or 8 different frequencies that were very clearly defined. And I identified them, I analyzed them, and I realized amazingly that when we combine these different tones, we could reproduce like most of the mathematical or physics constants, right? The speed of light, for instance, the distance, the size of the Earth or the size of the sun. This was, by just combining, multiplying, or dividing these different harmonics. So this was interesting, as if with the 8 tones, we could recreate the physics constants. So that's one thing that I was decoding. And I have a video on my YouTube channel that shows that. Actually, I showed the spectrogram analyzer decoding these tones and how mathematically essentially you can reproduce a lot of different mathematical and physics constants. So that's one case where I was able to decode something, if you will, that made sense. In the other case, I was not able to decode per se, but as I said, it does not feel like they are encoding really necessarily a language in this interaction. It feels like it's an energy that they're transmitting, like they are communicating or transmitting energy. And interestingly, very often on some energy signature, when I had these interactions, I had like a lot of thoughts or download after, as if they are like, as if this interactions or this energy contains information in the form of thought, and that thought, right, will materialize or surface at the right moment at the right time. And so as if they're kind of communicating directly with our consciousness through these energies, interactions. Very hard to be sure, right? It's just very, very strange, but it's clearly there is something to it. And in some cases, I mean, some have had experience with healing experience, and I have one healing experience myself. One of my good friend in making contact work, had an injury, a shoulder injury that was there for many, many years. And, after making contact, right, that injury just went away just instantly after making the request. I had my own, I played a lot of ice hockey in Canada, when I was younger. So I had really damaged my lower back. I had a lot of lower back pain many years ago. And sometimes I could barely walk. I mean, it was really painful. And at some point, I remember I was in a period where I was a lot of pain, and so I could barely walk. And I made a broadcast with my handheld radio, actually, not even my large radio station. And I broadcasted in Moscow to get some help, to try to have some kind of healing assistance or healing help to dissipate this pain. And I was not expecting anything. And during that night, I went to bed, and during that night, I had a lot of sweating, and as if I had like fever, if you will. The next day when I woke up, this back pain, the lower back pain, was gone. It never came back. And I had this back pain for many years. And so, again, hard to prove, but, when you have these things happen, you really start wondering, right, is it connected? So to me, it clearly something happened there that was really obvious. So again, this energy can be used for different purposes. And one last thing I want to mention here that connects to consciousness as well. So one day in March 2019, the spring of 2019, I broadcasted a message because I had many out-of-body experience throughout my life. Since I'm young, I had a lot of OBE or out-of-body experience. Anyway, so in 2019, I said, okay, I'm going to broadcast a message and make a request for the intelligence to induce an out-of-body experience. I was just by curiosity. Again, I wasn't expecting anything. So I made that request. And in that request, I was specifically asking for the intelligence to make sure that I can remember that experience, that I can remember this out-of-body experience, because sometimes we may forget, right, or we not have the memory. So I made this transmission in the afternoon. And maybe at 9 o'clock at night, I was in my bedroom. I was fully awake and aware like we're now. My eyes were open, and I sat on my bed because I was trying to get ready, to go to bed. And I was taken out of my body. I mean, I could feel literally as if I was dead. There was a separation of my consciousness from my body while I was my eyes open. I mean, I was fully awake and aware. I was not sleeping. What happened, I felt a big bright light in front of me. It was a very pleasant, actually, experience. It was not negative at all. And I recognized that I was, what was happening. And then after a few seconds, I blacked out and I don't remember what happened after. I just woke up the next day. I don't know what happened. So this was interesting to me also because all these out-of-body experience that I experienced throughout my childhood and my life, what happened during that experience from the non-human intelligence was identical. I felt exactly the same kind of out-of-body experience. So it really made me wonder if all these experience I had in my childhood and my life were actually them, interacting with my consciousness in some way, and I was experiencing it as an out-of-body experience. It may have been more a contact experience. But then I don't have the memory of what happens after, so hard to say. But yeah, there's a lot of there's a physical aspect to this, as we saw. The sightings are very real, it's very material. The interaction with the radios as well is very real, it's very material. They interact with the material world, but also there's a big consciousness aspect to this that's undeniable, which happened to me and to many other experiencers.
Well, from a scientific standpoint, there's no doubt this is something that's repeatable, which is an important bar to cross. Checking that off the list all of a sudden makes this a little bit more of a, I'm sure there's people listening that are doubting. I'm sure that there's doubters everywhere, but man, whenever you get something that's repeatable, that means something, especially in just a logical scientific world. So I think this is just fascinating. I have one final question for you. And based upon what you just shared, just some of your experiences and whatnot, out of body experiences. You mentioned in your communications, the Galactic Federation. Mm. Now, is this something, and obviously, someone just doesn't wake up and be like, hey, I'm going to go talk to the Galactic Federation today. No, this is something obviously that you're aware of, you've researched, you've looked into, or experienced in some way. Tell us a little bit about that connection and why that's who you're attempting to reach out to.
Sure. Well, there are many people who've had experience or contact experience that mentioned that there's Galactic Federation and other federations, the Intergalactic Federations, which is even above that. There's the Andromedan Council. So there's people having experience mentioning these, right? And so logically, it made sense to me, and it made sense to me to create messages towards that organization if it exists. I have not had physical or material interactions with the so-called Galactic Federation, but I made message to reach out to them, and you saw my radio interacting back, right? And so. Yeah. Is it them? Is it not them? I don't know. I cannot prove it, but it kind of made sense to me. So I've been broadcasting messages since 2017. Now it's been over 8 years, hundreds of them. And I can guarantee you that these messages of the power I'm using are being clearly heard and decoded by these intelligence, which explains all the interactions back I've had. And so I have no doubt it looks like there's a ton of civilizations or intelligence or consciousness out there that are monitoring us. The evidence is all over the place. Even in the documentary from Darcy, we can see it from the shuttle space station, the ISS, all kinds. The evidence is there that we are being watched and monitored in many ways. So it makes sense to me that when I broadcast these messages, it's drawing attentions from intelligences out there. So, but again, it's what I can say is I encourage everyone to do their own homework and try it. But there are many contact groups out there. And you don't need to be in a contact group. I always did most of my contact 95% by myself alone, right? It became a very personal experience. And it's almost like if we dare to break the veil, we're going to experience something. It's going to change our life. It certainly changed my life. And that's what I call breaking the veil. It's like we've been taught since we're young that we cannot go faster than the speed of light, that there's nothing out there that we've detected in the universe. We seem to be alone. This is all, sorry to say, but garbage, right? It's to keep us in that box, keep us, contained, and so we can be better controlled this way, probably. But once we dare to break the veil and try it and try to have experience, I can guarantee you, all the people I know who seriously tried it they had some kind of experience. So I think it's part of the great awakening that's happening right now.
Yeah, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on. Whenever I reached out to you, and I told you, I was like, man, I'm interested in this. I don't know a lot about it, so. But man, you really took me down a road here, and I'm certainly a believer in the technology and wow, just awesome, man. Good for you. Maybe I'd like to have you back sometime down the road and let me get my head wrapped around this, and then maybe we go to the next step. But this has been awesome. Tell people how they can follow you, watch your documentary, any of your research, your website, all of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Ryan. And by the way, I do have a ton of material. I have more videos. And this goes actually down a rabbit hole that's pretty amazing, because this goes into this new perspective on physics I was talking about, this universal language, which is very mathematical, based on physics. It's very simple in a sense, and that's what I've developed over the years, because I recognize this is a language they're using to communicate. And so yeah, I'll be happy to do another show at, whenever it's convenient. So I do have a YouTube channel called Human Initiated Contact, in all cap, Human Initiated Contact. You can find all my videos. I have interviews as well, and all my findings are there. I have people can find me on Facebook with my name, Jimmy Blanchette. They can send me a friend request, and I post all my discoveries and my work there as well. And I made a homemade documentary a few years ago called First Contact. It's free. It's available on my YouTube channel. You can find it. It lasts an hour. There's a short version of it as well, which shows again these contact experiences, and also other contact group who's making contact. So there's videos of it. And yeah, that's about it. So again, I'm on the social media, so I should be easy to find.
Excellent. Man, I really appreciate this, and we're going to definitely have you back in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been awesome. Go check out his website for sure. The one and only Jimmy Blanchette. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Take care.
Today's conversation really challenges how we think about communication, intelligence, and what might already be interacting with us beyond our current models. Folks, when the episode ends, we keep the mics on, and that off-air conversation becomes the aftermath. It's the behind-the-scenes talk once the pressure's off. Sometimes analytical, sometimes casual, but always real. If you want that access and want to support the show, you'll find it all at patreon.com/The Ryan Files. You folks are awesome. Be amazing, be positive, and stay curious out there, my friends. And I'll see you next time right here on The Ryan Files.
Whispers in the static, secrets leave a mark. Truth ain't in the daylight, it lives after dark. Ryan's on the trail, pulling threads apart. The Ryan Files after dark, this is where it starts. Angels on the skyline, demons in the mist. Giants in the earth, fists the size of cliffs. Nephilim footprints, history's abyss. Pyramids aligned, but who's making the list? Oh God, sleeping, Yahweh's thunder roars.